with the announcement of a new Jujutsu Kaisen game on the horizon, that already looks like absolute dog water, because guess what? It's another arena fighter with no depth and looks crusty as hell, like it should be on the PS3. When I saw this trailer, it reminded me of all the countless anime games that were based on ongoing anime series, most of, if not all of which, were disappointing to say the least. They all, with some exception, fall into one of two types of games. One, an arena fighter, or two, a Musou game, otherwise known as a Dynasty Warriors type game. There are some outliers to this, as well as some that are more disappointing than others, but overall, of all the games mentioned here, all are disappointing in one way or another. So let's go through a handful of them and briefly go through why each of them are kind of meh. I feel like I have to preface all of this, however, so that people with hurt feelings don't try to do me up like John Lennon. I'm not saying these games are flat out bad, but I'm saying with the popularity of these series, these finished products had so much potential that completely fell flat. I'd also like to say that I'm a huge fan of all the properties that these games are based on. Like, all of them are sick to me. Anyway, let's start off with a fairly minor disappointment of a game. Demon Slayer Hinokami Chronicles. Let's start off with an arena fighter. A decent one at that. Unlike a lot of the others on this list, there is a decent amount of good stuff about this game. First of all, the story mode. Most things about this game's story mode are absolutely spot on. The demons you fight are varied enough, you can explore a bit, it's a nice break in between boss battles, and on top of that, the other major positive of this game, the visuals. Oh my giddy god. Rule of thumb for anime games, if you don't know, if they're made by CyberConnect 2, the fan service is going to be absolutely godlike. But, as a result of visuals being so good, usually something else takes a major hit. In Demon Slayer's case, the main drawbacks are as such. The roster is just straight up trash. It may as well be called Water Breather Chronicles, because the release roster was pretty much just water breathers. Tanjiro, Gyu, Urukadaki. Remember those two kids that died to a fodder demon years ago? Both of them are playable, of course, and of course both of them are also water breathers, plus another Tanjiro in a school uniform, so add another to the list, as well as another Gyu who's also in a school uniform, as well as everyone's favourite demon slayer, Murata. Remember that one guy who survived the Spider Mountain attack via luck? He's playable instead of any of the other Hashira. Yay. The roster honestly feels like a Budokai Tenkaichi game because there's too many of the same characters with different forms. After DLC, we have 4 Tanjiros, 3 Zenitsus, 3 Inosuke's, 3 Nezukos, 2 Gyus, and 2 Shinobus. Instead of having all these duplicates, we could have had a different Hashira maybe. Added some of the other Upper Moons that have only been seen in the manga so far up to this point, like Upper Moon 1, maybe even the Sunbreather Yoriichi. But no, we have to make room for anime-only content, so we have to get a bunch of repeats even as DLC. The most annoying thing about the roster is that the majority of the cast feel like they play exactly the same, despite the small roster on release. And even after DLC being released, the roster itself isn't too big for an anime fighter. And, worst of all, when the game first came out, there was 0 playable demons besides Nezuko. We had to wait months for Akaze and Rui to be added as a free update. So on release, the roster initially looked like this. It was pretty much just a swimming pool with all these water shenanigans. These characters were in the game as boss battles, but they just weren't in the game playable on release. Even after all the DLCs released, for an arena fighter, comparatively speaking, with CyberConnect 2's other games, its numbers for the roster are lacking severely. Well, that's enough about the roster. What about the gameplay? Well, it's pretty much exactly like a Storm game, like with slight differentiations to suit the Demon Slayer property. The combo system is slightly different, and blocking and the tag system is yet again slightly different, but overall, if you've played a Storm game, you're going to feel right at home. But that is a huge negative for this game, because this game has significantly less content than a Naruto Storm game, which are also made by CyberConnect 2. In Hinokami Chronicles, you have the story mode, which, as I said, is pretty good. And you have training mode, which, despite being called training, is pretty much just missions where you fight one character over and over again with slightly different objectives. And you also have online matches. Sick. But this game, like all arena fighters, feels horribly balanced, so playing it online is like an absolute fever dream. Content for this game after beating the story mode is absolutely barren. There isn't anything really else to do. The game expects you to keep playing with the allure and depth of the combat system, which, in all honesty, is pretty shallow and lacks any real depth. It's just a Storm game. I mean, it even uses the same font for some reason as a Storm game. If you want a better version of Hinokami Chronicles, in all honesty, play Storm 4. Just like Demon Slayer, all the characters feel similar, but there are so many characters in Storm 4 that won't be an issue. And on top of that, most characters have like different specials and ultimate jutsus, different awakenings, team jutsus. You can also play the story mode, the adventure mode, which means there's more stuff to do than just the story mode, and basic missions. However, if you don't like Naruto but like Demon Slayer, I will say this about Hinokami Chronicles. If you're a huge fan, if you get it on a sale, it can be worth playing through the story just to see the amazing animations. But overall, this game is a textbook case of style over substance. Next game, Black Clover and the Quartet Knights. This game is kind of an oddity. Despite what I said in the intro, this is not an arena fighter nor a Musou game. It is a MOBA. If you don't know what that means, it's a multiplayer online battle arena game. So think Dota, League of Legends, but the MOBA this game has most in common with is Smite, when regarding gameplay anyway. So let's go through the positives of this game first. Firstly, look at it. Personally, I think this art style suits Black Clover and the character models look relatively decent. And unfortunately, somehow manages to look better than the Jujutsu Kaisen game, which is coming out on PS5, and that hurts me because despite the fact this JJK game looks absolutely terrible, I'm still going to buy it because I love JJK. For another positive, one aspect of Black Clover that I love in the manga and anime is that characters constantly do combined spells, which is pretty cool, and the gameplay reflects this by giving characters the ability to combo specific skills together, which is pretty nice. And the gameplay overall, from what I can tell, is relatively solid and a bold choice for a game that clearly didn't have a good budget or ample development time from the looks of it. Okay, time for all the negatives. Despite the gameplay style that was chosen, the game has a story mode that's pretty intriguing on first inspection. However, it's not very good. Crustily animated scenes, lazily animated cutscenes, a kind of strange plot that exists only to make yummy stands water at the mouth. It's pretty whack. I mean, there is a decent amount of missions, and each mission can be played from different perspectives, which is cool. However, you have to both really enjoy the gameplay and be intrigued in this plot to really dive into it, which I wasn't. Another major downfall of this game is its roster. When you first see it, it looks decent, which it is. However, take away 3, because these are DLC, and since this is all anime tie-in, like all of the games on this list, it only follows the anime series and isn't based off anything that was in the manga at the time of the game's creation. And since all these games that I mentioned are purely anime tie-in games that exclusively follow the anime and show nothing that is exclusive to the manga at the time of the game's release, the roster is kind of just a shadow of what it could have been. Just look at Asta. Sure, we get Black Asta, but it's DLC and it's only a skin and doesn't affect gameplay. And we don't get most of the captains in the roster either. I get this game was covering early Black Clover, but it's such wasted potential to not have some of the more interesting characters instead of Gauche, as well as having another Yami be playable for some reason. There was clearly a plan for this game to be the anime equivalent of like the next hit MOBA, but it just never caught on. This game doesn't have much content besides its story. It has missions that teach you each playable character, just like Demon Slayer, but besides that, all you've got left is the online play. But unfortunately, MOBAs are a style of game that rely solely on a large player base to keep the game alive, which this game never got. It just simply died on release and didn't have a fandom to keep, which is a shame because there is probably something here for MOBA fans to enjoy. If you're a huge Black Clover fan, this game is always on sale, same with Demon Slayer. It has some good fan service throughout its story mode. It's not the best since it looks pretty crusty, but it's somewhat intriguing if you're a huge fan. The gameplay itself can be pretty fun, so maybe try it out when it's on sale by a significant margin, because paying anywhere near full price is not worth it due to how little content is here, besides its rushed story, and on top of that, just don't expect to be able to play it online. Or you could just play Smite, it's free. Next, disappointment. Berserk, Band of the Hawk. There is not much for me to say about this game. There is so very little here, it's just honestly saddening. This game falls into the camp of being a Musou game, meaning you play as a one-man army and take territories and defeat enemy leaders to win. Given Guts' 100-man Slayer title, it makes sense for this kind of game, I guess, but personally, I don't think it suits the narrative at all. I don't see Judo, my favourite character, taking out hundreds of men on his own, but hey, whatever. The only good thing about this game that stands out, very minor. First of all, the cutscenes look relatively good, and also if you play through the entirety of the story mode and a bunch of other stuff, you gain the ability to play in the Berserker armor as Guts, as well as play as Femtor. Besides those couple of things, this game is absolutely terrible. Firstly, despite being a Musou game, there is no co-op of any kind, be it online or offline, despite the Band of the Hawk being in the title, insinuating that this game can be played with a merry group of friends. Get used to playing this like the Black Swordsman, on your own and miserable. No local or online co-op at all. Secondly, the roster, it's I don't know how they messed it up this bad. I mean, we got Wild, a character everyone forgot about, instead of, a playable Grumbel, Farnese, Isidro, Corcus, Salat, Pippin, Locus, Irvine, Rashas, or Skull Knight, even though he's just in the game. Despite most of them being in the game, actually, they're just not playable. There are two things you can do gameplay-wise in this game. You have the story mode, and you have the Endless Eclipse. The story mode is exactly what it sounds like, boring gameplay with terrible, just dog water, terrible boss fights that are seasoned with okay looking cutscenes. Or, if you don't want to do the story mode, you can do the Endless Eclipse, which is just a consecutive mission after mission game mode that ends on floor 100, where it's a boss rush, but given the fact that it's a Muso game, it's not built for boss fights, so, you know, that I'm not doing that again. And also, the Eclipse mode is just super boring and miserable and has no variety, and it's just padding for the game since they didn't want just the story mode. Even as a Muso game, which tends to be very grindy and monotonous, this is the worst I've ever seen by far. The only good things to come from this game are the aforementioned cutscenes, as well as the ability to play as the Berserker Armor and Femto. However, the slog to unlock these are not worth it at all. Play a better anime Warriors game like Pirate Warriors 3 or 4. Yeah, those games can be grindy, but at least the rosters are huge and you can play them with your bros. Next, let's discuss My Heroes 1's Justice 2. There is literally no point talking about 1's Justice 1 since it's literally the same game but with a smaller roster. So, let's talk about the positives first. There's plenty of stuff to do in this game. We have a full story mode that can be played as both the heroes and the villains. However, like every other mention on this list, the cutscenes are mostly terrible, but we also have a couple that are animated really well. We have a mission mode, which is kind of like a territory-based game mode where you slowly take back areas by beating enemies, and it genuinely feels like Budokai 2 story mode, which is a deep cut, but that's how it feels. Plus, you always recruit new characters for your own hero agency in this mode. It's pretty intriguing. We also have an arcade mode, which is exactly like it sounds, since it's yet another arena fighter. We also have an online mode, but the thing that helped this game stand out a little bit more on release was its customization options for each hero. You can make some absolute monstrosities. It's pretty cool. And on top of all of this, the game's roster is not bad at all. However, its DLC roster has some questionable choices in my opinion. Right, this all sounds great. Why is it so disappointing? Well, since it's an arena fighter, all the game modes center around this style of gameplay, and somehow it's even more janky than any other arena fighter I've ever played. This game is so just botched together, it's absurd. Since you can fight on walls, double jump, air dash, the struggles to auto lock you onto your opponent when you attack, it's super janky. Takes too long to get meter in my opinion, balance is all over the place. There's a lot wrong with this package on the gameplay side. Also, since the gameplay centers around a lot of combos that rely on attacks auto-locking onto your opponent, it makes the transitions between attacks look kind of iffy and goofy half the time. Overall, however, I will say, this game can be fun. There is some interesting stuff here, like how specific quirks interact with each other. The fully animated cutscenes are pretty cool, and the sheer amount of content for this game make it so that if you're a fan of My Heroes, a series, and you can push past the crusty gameplay, then you can have a really decent time on your own, or an even better time playing with your mates. Just don't use this game or its predecessor as a way to consume the narrative of My Hero. Watch the show or read the manga. The story mode in not just this game but all the other games I'm mentioning and or will mention are absolutely terrible from a storytelling perspective. They're just really lazy, like all of the games on this list. Just get it on sale if you're a fan. It's always on sale anyway, to be honest. Also, I noticed all of these games are usually on sale. I wonder why. And also, if you just want a game that just plays better than this but is also an arena fighter and looks better, try Burning Blood. Why not? Try that out. One Piece just has some great games, to be honest. And time for the worst of the bunch. Of all the games I'm going to mention in this video, this game is just straight up bad, more so than just being a disappointing waste of potential. Tokyo Ghoul Call to Exist. I'm probably going to make a full video about how terrible this game is in the future, be it distant or not so I'll give you the bullet points version here. This is going to be quick. The graphics are crusty as hell, the story follows the anime, not the manga. The cutscenes in the story mode are the laziest out of any on the list. At least the other mentions in the list have some movement in their cutscenes. The roster is actually terrible. No playable Edo, Orca, Jason, Rize, Noro, Tataru, Yoshimura, Shinhara, Hinami, Kichimura, Ghoul, but instead we have two versions of Naki to play as instead. Cool. And since it's anime only, we don't get the one-eyed King Kaneki or any of the other cool stuff that's only in the manga. The gameplay itself is insanely grindy and boring. Despite that, however, you can skip large parts of the game in most missions without killing any enemies since the game is pretty much broken. The game has no real identity. I can't tell whether or not it wants to be another Muso game or something different, because for some reason it has online PvP as well as a character creator. Never had the chance to play online since the game is dead as hell. The character creation is also the weakest I've ever seen in any game ever. For a series that has ghouls to be identified by their masks, there's barely any masks to choose from, as well as Kagune. Plenty of the Kagune feel exactly the same though, so there's another problem. The game just makes absolute damage sponge enemies to pad out the game at certain points. The game is boring, not fun, and a waste of money. Never buy it. If you disagree with this opinion, your rose-tinted glasses are so red you can't see this absolute waste of time, money, and potential this pile of utter trash is. I bought this game because I saw positive reviews on Steam. Don't trust Steam reviews for anime games. The only people who leave reviews on there are already fans of the series and who are going to give a positive rating before they even play it, and as a result I wasted 20 quid. This game can burn in the lowest pits of Tartarus for all I care. Yes, there are plenty of other disappointing anime games, but these are some that always really annoyed me for one reason or another. Despite how much I adore each of these series, I can't look past how cash grabby and terrible these games are, even if they are based on properties I absolutely adore. Let me know if you want a sequel to this, since there are plenty of other disappointing anime games out there. Like, comment, subscribe, thank you for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one. Doodles my doodles. Peace.